called the Duma Boyar Moisich Patriarch of Yauza and Koki. At the beginning of the year, the Tsar, like his court jesters, invented a new prank, bless, to sing, in honor of the pagan god Bacchus, a palace maintained by the government, temporarily called the Palace of the Fort. For this, the high priest set off dressed in the disgusting characteristic costumes, holding his mitre, in which Bacchus shone in all his nudity, as if remembering his debauchery. On the staff, Cupid and Aphrodite were represented, so that everyone could see the kind of flock that shepherd had. From 2 cross cigarettes, they created a crucifix, with which that actor blessed the audience. Fortunately, the ambassador of the Tsar, out of respect for the Christian faith, refused to profane the precepts of the Holy Church. There is no longer any respect for the Church, would that the Orthodox faith would not be exhausted. This Tsar of ours is a histrionic, and the Tsarina smiled disdainfully. The people are not laughing at the destruction of the old system, and if foreign winds are difficult for us, what will it be like for the rascal Niki, who venerate traditions more than we do? Oh, we place too much trust in foreigners and foreign beliefs, allowing them to do as they please. It is not a good thing to invite and allow foreigners to mingle with the people and be naturalized. Their migrations here are not always successful, only benefiting their enemies. Everything they think of us, they write in their injurious books. Consider some of them, like Herbesin Jajmont and Nipasivin Pavlyovich, among others. Recently, O'Leary or Petre, if I remember correctly, invented all sorts of insults against Holy Russia, exposing us as a despicable and disgusting people. The Germans harbor a violent hatred for us, because they find our simple and wasteful lifestyle abhorrent to them, since we are content with little. They try to destroy our blessed traditions, to wander throughout the kingdom, as if in their inns, and, introducing luxury and debauchery, they could despoil us of our honor, our good name, and our resources. Vital, as they did with the Latvians and Hungarians. Now they have neither order nor government. A barren land is preferable, but with a pure people. Know yourself and do and trust foreigners, said Yuri Krijanowskaia. Perhaps you, heard of his writings, Prince? Of course. I knew him personally in Tobolsk when I was with the Boyar Pyotr Mihailovich Saltykov. He is a man of rare intelligence, and his writings are famous in Moscow. They were much talked about at the time. Unfortunately, his advice came to nothing then, and today no one gives him the slightest importance. It is understandable. Krijanich was of Slavic descent and could understand the German spirit. He, already in his own homeland, experienced the good reputation of these Germans. Yes, since Tsar Peter was so eager to bring an alien system to our country, he should have taken another country as an example. Taking advantage of his stay in the English kingdom, he could have learned much good, since their system bears close resemblance to our traditions. The English king governs a people in the same way that Russian princes once did, using popular assemblies, or, more recently, councils. There, for a long time, local affairs were favored, and consequently, there was trust and greater freedom. The young Tsar, as soon as he went abroad, didn't know what to choose. Dazzled by the wonders, he mistook tinsel for pure gold. For in the Germanic kingdoms, as in others, there is much disorder, insubordination, and oppression. Copying their regimes en bloc without rethinking them is not possible, since that in this part our rubbish is enough. My little brother boasts that he is spreading the light. Apart from my father, in whose time there were many advocates of reform, including respected foreigners, we can mention Boris Ivanovich Morozov, as well as the Tsar Esfranashkin or Sujevich. Even during my sister's reign, no one was against foreign fashions when they were useful. It was just that Sophia had different tendencies. In her reign, the Enlightenment was Latin, which is understandable. The Roman Church does not contain immorality, does not reject ecumenical principles or traditions. Sacred and ancestral traditions, does not decline the gospel, like the Lutheran heretics who settled here. Thus, we must relate to and not reject the Latins. It is a great truth. The Germanic seduction to corrupt minds will lead to all sorts of heresies. First, dogmatic heresy, such as doctrines contrary to the Holy Fathers and the Orthodox faith, the errors that desecrate devotion and impede salvation. Second, heresies contrary to the interests of the state, which bring down the honor and glory of the people. not to mention occult heresies, such as those of serving demons. Not only among Christians, but throughout the world, there have never been as many notorious sorcerers as among the Germans. No one has as many profane and immoral books as in the Germanic lands. Perhaps the young Tsar experienced a fascinating incredulity when he learned about the occult society called the Voluntary Masons. Besides worshiping and serving the devil, they strive to destroy faith in God and subjugate leaders and people. That is why they have placed their people everywhere. And so, we must be wary of these sycophants, of the Tsar, especially the Germans. Although they are afraid to openly profess their doctrine of evil, with their fiery rhetoric, they can seduce the unwise. However, God often demystifies apostates. It is said that Lefort spent the night at his lover S. house a few days before his death. Such was the orgy in the bedroom that it frightened his family. Yes, the son did not take after his parents. Natalia Kirilovna, still, who experienced a foreign spirit in the Matveev house, did not allow the foreigners to harass her. Don't even say it. The late Tsar father was a balanced character, a very decent sovereign. He knew how to be both strict and tolerant. He was a hope of all, without instilling fear. I'm not saying this just because I'm talking about his daughter. These are the words of a foreigner, Jakuba Reitenfels. The Tsar preferred solitude, and when he enjoyed himself, he did so as befitted his position. He hunted. He attended theatrical performances, which were also enjoyed by his wife and children. And he didn't get drunk with foreign sailors for whole nights, nor did he frequent the weddings of foreign merchants. It wouldn't be long before he ended up imprisoning his legitimate wife in a monastery and taking as his new Tsarina one of the lost women of the German community. God forbid. And as soon as the young Tsar tastes the brew, as Father Varnava says, he loosens his fists and gives his henchmen a good beating. Even Alexachka gets it, even though she is one of his favorites. And in his anger, he is also very violent, not second to Tsar Ivan. How can an Orthodox Tsar, keeping executioners from among the people, himself execute his adversaries or those guilty of disobedience? He even summons foreign ambassadors to witness that humiliating spectacle. In what other country has such thing been seen? Well, Prince, I have talked so much that I am even afraid something will happen to you for talking to a rebellious prisoner. Here comes Sister Maria to fetch you. Farewell and good health. God bless you, Tsarina. Marfa Alexeyevna walked along the path towards the palisade house visible in the distance. Danila Petrovich, who had bowed respectfully to her, sat down again on the bench and sank into thought. His reflections were interrupted by the novice who had approached. "Please, Prince," she said. Danila Petrovich slowly got up and followed her with his head down. They passed through monastery gates and entered a pine grove adjacent to the walls of the nuns' dwelling. Soon, around the bend in the path, a small izba appeared, which served as a seer SL. Near the gate, in a mound of snow, stood 3 scarecrows, the door to. The entrance was locked and, above it, fixed to the wall, was an image of Our Lady, before which a lamp burned. "Look, Prince, this lamp never goes out, no matter what the weather. Sister Praskovia must have locked herself in because she doesn't want to see anyone. For when I came, the windows and the door were open," said the novice, approaching the little window to look inside. At that moment, a loud voice was heard from inside the izba. "Come in, Danila Petrovich. I've been waiting for you. And you, sister, go back to the monastery. I need to speak with the prince alone." Overcome by superstitious fear, Danila Petrovich entered a small, practically empty room. There were only 2 wooden benches, one small, the other slightly larger, and a table covered with a white cloth, on which lay the Eucharistic bread and a jug of water. In the corner hung several icons. The prince prayed to the images and bowed his head in reverence to Praskovia. She was a thin old woman, her face furrowed with dull wrinkles. Her dark eyes burned with strange expression and brightness. In her hands jingled an iron chain. "Oh, my unfortunate friend, you didn't want to hitch yourself to Satan's ignominious chariot with the 7 deadly sins on the coach, which mocks faith and desecrates the cross, and the people bowed down to it, venerating the power of vices and selling their souls for gold. You didn't want to? That's good. But how hard is the trial that God sends you? What insults and humiliations from outsiders await you?" Suddenly she gave a mad scream and recoiled. Her bulging eyes seemed to have seen something hideous. Oh, what ill fate! Oh, what a fateful day! I see blood on you, and what blood! It would be better if you had never been born. Your ordeal is terrible. Dungeon and torture threaten you. You will lose a son, but you will gain a daughter. Danila Petrovich staggered at these words and pressed his hands to his chest. Merciful God, what have I done to deserve your wrath? I have always tried to live according to your laws. I have served you in the country honestly. He leaned against a wall, closed his eyes, and warm tears streamed down his face. However, the weakness did not last long, and Danila Petrovich recovered, seeing that Praskovia had fallen to her knees before the icons. He also knelt beside her, and a burning prayer rose from his afflicted heart. He gave himself over to prayer, submissively placing his fate and his life in God's hands, and this surge of exalted faith carried his soul far from the earth with its sufferings. Praskovia stood up and looked at him thoughtfully, then put her hands on his head and shoulder. Danila Petrovich shuddered and turned to her. Do not cry, Prince. God has heard your prayers. He sees your whole and pure heart, and the celestial queen has covered you with a mantle of protection. But prepare yourself for the long journey. In less than 3 dawns you will rise to the other world. The inspired, searching gaze became affable, and the voice, usually stern and harsh, sounded deep and gentle. Danila Petrovich paled, but crossing himself with a wide sign of the cross, he bent his head 3 times on his knees. "Oh, God, thy will be done," he said in a moved tone. Rising, he thanked the Blessed One and asked her to pray for him, which he promised to do. "Go in peace," she added, accompanying him to the door. Suddenly, seeing the scarecrows planted to the half-open door, she was overcome with mad fury. Stepping outside, she began to run and hop around, kicking them with her feet. "Feet, rejoice and rejoice, you ignominious band of strangers. You have another enemy defeated. Another faithful servant of Holy Russia has been sentenced to death." Grabbing a broom near the gate, Praskovia began to strike at the scarecrows, knocking them down and trampling them underfoot. The fit of madness grew worse. Foam dripped from her mouth and her eyes bulged from their sockets. Suddenly, as if cut down, she fell lifeless to the ground. Sister Maria, who was waiting not far from the woods, rushed to the prince's aid and helped him carry Praskovia to her cell, where she was placed in the care of a cell-sister. Then the 2 of them, the novice and Danila Petrovich, set off for the monastery. The prince found the Mother Superior still with Elena. Asking his daughter to leave, he recounted his encounter with Praskovia and her predictions. God did not want to take my life before on the battlefield. Now he calls me to himself. Well, blessed be his wise designs. Mother Porphyria burst into tears. "Don't cry, sister," he addressed her gently. "Each of us must be ready to answer God's call. Aren't we fleeting visitors here? For me, at least, the Almighty granted a special grace, indicating the time of my departure, so that I could prepare myself worthily. I will stay here for 1 more day, as I would like to spend that time in prayer. I will take communion in the morning, and then I will depart for Moscow, where I will await God's will." After a brief conversation with the Mother Superior, Danila Petrovich retired to the church, where he spent the day and night fasting, praying, and repenting. Then he confessed and received communion during the liturgy. After a frugal meal with the Mother Superior, he said goodbye and left. Elena slept poorly that night. Liza's story left her depressed. She prayed long and hard, cried often, and slowly in her soul a firm decision was brewing, that it would be better to accept the customs than to marry the Baron. Furthermore, she was afflicted by an indefinable fear and a feverish dread that she could not explain. This disturbing feeling intensified even more during the meal before her father's departure, when he saw his aunt's incomprehensible nervousness and silent tears, as well as an inexplicable expression in his father's eyes. The farewell was also strange and unusual, longer and more moving. With a heavy heart and a bad feeling, she climbed into the carriage that left for Moscow. 7. Upon learning that his sister would not be going to the ball, Artemy was furious, as were Anna Petrovna and the Baron. Neither of them doubted, however, so much so that one way or another they would achieve their goals. Danila Petrovich's stubbornness, however, infuriated them. making them want revenge on him and Gleb. So the illustrious nephew and his aunt used all the resources at court to get both insubordinate men out of the way. Dorfgame, in turn, promised to appeal to influential people, and in the Monsov family they assured him that they would appeal directly to the Tsar. The Baron was a ruined wastrel, though of noble birth. His Kurland relatives sent the impoverished reveler to the court of the reformist Tsar, where he could find his feet and even make a career. Being a German through and through, he hated and despised Russia and the Russians. But, understandably, this hatred did not extend to beautiful and especially wealthy heiress, the object of his conquest, a marriage with whom he found quite advantageous. On the day of Danila Petrovich, S returned with his daughter, Dorfgame and 2 friends went to home of fellow countrymen who had managed to acquire a house of his own near the city entrance. They had to pass through a square in front of the fortified gates, where a sentry post stood and some soldiers chatted in low voices. Right next to the gates, 2 guards sat on a bench, smoking. Since the afternoon, it had snowed heavily, and the wind had whipped up huge drifts, making the walk difficult. Dorfgame and his friends were making their way slowly in single file, exchanging pleasantries, when suddenly, as they drew level with the bench, one of the Germans slipped and crashed to the ground. His fall was greeted by a burst of laughter. He was covered in snow. The guards rushed to his aid, lifted him up, and helped him shake off the snow. But after receiving a curt thank you for their efforts, they returned to the bank, watching the Germans with looks of contempt. "Did you see those skaters?" One of them grumbled, lighting his pipe. "Listen, Terenti," said the other. "Did you notice the German's coat? Did you see what it was made of?" "Of course not. Top-notch red brocade, just like the one we sheared the other day from the boyar. I'll remember it for a long time. He gave me such a good slap that my face was swollen for a week. That LL pass. Your face is healed. The important thing is that the tailor paid well for the brocade. The worst part is that few boyars pass through now. It's monotonous, just when we re-used to cutting their hems." Terenti burst out laughing. "Ha ha ha, you've got the hang of it. The work is profitable. We see and complain. Tailors pay well for brocade hems for waistcoats, barbers for beards for wigs. Ha ha ha, these are new times. It used to be said that when masters fight, servants get beaten. Nowadays, the boyars, beards go into the servants' wigs." Half an hour passed, and the guards continued to smoke, now silent, exchanging a few words every now and then. Suddenly Terenti elbowed his companion. "Look, Michuka, God must have heard your complaints. There comes a carriage approaching, carrying an old white, bearded boyar and a woman wrapped in a cloak. They must be of noble birth, for they are accompanied by 3 Gar horsemen. The prey is coming straight to its hunter. Let's go quickly." He whistled and ran toward Danila Petrovich's heavy carriage, which, dipping into potholes, was slowly crawling along the road. Heeding the call, the soldiers approached the riders and, grabbing the horses by the harness, shouted at the top of their lungs, "Stop! Stop!" Immediately the carriage was surrounded, the doors opened, and the prince and his daughter were thrown out into the snow. Prince Ilya and the servants tried in vain to defend themselves. Everyone was overpowered, and Danila Petrovich was dragged across the square, shouting, "You like to disobey the Tsar, don't you? Just you wait, we'll teach you a lesson." A crowd of soldiers surrounded Danila Petrovich, hurling insults at him. "We'll let him go in peace, Daddy. We'll just trim the hems of his caftan and shorten his beard," said one, "and we won't charge anything for the service." Another one joked, drawing a laugh from his companions. With the Tsar's tailors and barbers. As the scene unfolded, Dorfgame and his companions were leaving their friend S' house, where they were enjoying food and drink. They saw a crowd in the square and, upon noticing the stopped carriage, realized what was happening. "Let's quickly take a look at how to make a modern caftan for one of these barbarians," shouted Dorfgame. He ran toward the crowd and energetically began to clear the way for the passage.